even though it
Yeah.
would not meet that. And so,
Well, that's where a decision needs to be made by the landowner.
right.
And I'm just explaining, yes, so we were looking for a planting plan, also an area, a schedule if there are vines to be planted, receipts, things showing a good faith effort that additional vines have been ordered and are going to be planted. So, as David said, moving forward, that's what we would be looking for, is at least approaching that number. And then the committee would have to make a decision if that is suitable or not.
I think just from looking at, or what we've heard and looking at that area to the west, the flatter area compared to the steeper kind of slope area, that flatter area, obviously it's better suited for the landowner's intent, but it's also better suited for a variety. It doesn't have to be vineyards. It has to be just in commercial ag production. So it could be some other commodity. And I think there's greater flexibility for a variety of commodities on that area than that slope area. So if there was, I think that is still going to be part of, I think, the committee's consideration, is that that's probably, of the available areas that could be brought into production, that's probably the first area that's most suitable. But it obviously runs in opposition to what the landowner is looking at.
Yes.
Do you have that case production language handy? I did want to look at it just because I'm interpreting it differently of when the 50% gets brought in, and I understand that you've been doing it based on the full site, but like if a full site has half of it as like a river, then the other half, all 100% of it would need to be brought into cultivation. It just seems like that is a tough requirement. And it seems to me with so much of this site being unfeasible that we should be allowed to take that out before calculating the 50%.
Yes, we are pulling up that information right now in the uniform rules on page 25. 25?
No, I mean, I think they were mixing, maybe she was mixing two different aspects of the
Oh, the
uniform rules.
case production.
First, yeah,
Oh,
so
yeah.
putting the case production aside, it's really the commercial ag production requirements for prime contract. And so that's on page 15.
We'll pull that up for you in just a minute.
Teresa, maybe if you just go to the P&D website real quick, I can direct you to there.
I apologize. I should have had it.
Oh, that's okay. Was there any other comments at this point from the planner, or any questions from the public we could take while we're waiting?
Codes and regulations.
Francisco, County Planning. I don't have anything further.
The gray
at the
box
moment.
where.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see anybody here in the audience for this item, and I don't know if anyone's online.
We do not have any public comment.
Okay, so we'll close public comment on this item.
Yeah, the rule is 1-2.3, which is the commercial production and reporting requirements, and then under. Yeah, page 15. Right there.
So do you see that under 1-2.3, it says commercial production and reporting requirements, and this would be considered a prime contract. So under A, prime land.
A1, that is the starting language. It says prime land must maintain a minimum of either 50% of the premises or 50 acres, whichever is less, fully planted in commercial ag production, unless it can be demonstrated to the APAC that is unreasonable due to terrain, sensitive resources, or similar
Yeah,
constraints.
so
So you
I think
start
that's
with the
where-
50%, you start with the 50% of the premises, which would be 26 acres. Then you reduce it if that cannot be met because of the geographic or topographic or sensitive resource constraints. So it's not looking at what's planted or what's available. You start with 50% of the premises. So again, that's sort of the basic commercial ag production from prime land. It could be a variety of commercial ag commodities. Obviously, the main use and the main production is grapes and vineyards, and that has its own minimum planting for vineyards related to the case production for the approved winery. But as far as, and then I think there's only 17, well, I think we had talked about what that number would be based on, there had been some years of overproduction, and now there's readjusting of the production. And I think the projected
Yes,
case
and
production
we-
is going to, it's seeking to be around 10,500 cases. So I think we did the calculation, and that would be 17 acres planted or something. So I think it was very close to meeting that, or just either right above or right below it. But so, I mean, that's one portion of the commercial ag production. But going back to this rule, we're still looking for ongoing eligibility to meet as close you can that 50%, understanding that there are constraints that you wouldn't be able to get to the 50%. But as we had talked about, there are those areas like the flat area to the west that has historic ag production. It looks like it could be brought into ag production to increase and get closer to that, meeting that minimum 50% planted. And as we said, that's sort of the rub here.
Yeah, I wish that language could have been a little bit more clear. I understand how you guys are interpreting it and how you've applied it. It just wasn't that. It wasn't that black and white in my mind of when you apply the infeasible areas. Okay, well, so we will the landowner's on and she's listening. So we'll come back with a planting plan. My assumption is the farm stay is not an issue because it's within the existing residence and guest house. So it's within, is that correct? As far as your committee is concerned?
Well, it's not agendized, so I think we can't really give a definitive position on that. I mean, it doesn't affect the commercial ag production that we've been talking about today, since you're not proposing new structures that would take land out of production.
This is the landowner here, Jamila Kabugos. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I did just want to chime in as I'm reading these uniform rules, and I do respect fully the history of APAC and what you've over the past decades have the method that you've applied this rule. But and I'm an attorney by trade, so when I'm reading this language, it's really not clear how, it's not definitive as to how to interpret that initial 50% starting point. And again, I understand that, tradition has led you to first apply the full premises and then require the maximum amount thereafter, considering, the infeasible areas. But what I'm reading here is that it says where constraints are determined to exist, APAC will recommend the minimum productive acreage particular to the premises. So I'm reading it that APAC has, considerable discretion here based on looking at the property and, considering the AEO and kind of what the significance and the intent of the AEO and where the board, would like to take agricultural properties, considering that ordinance. I do think I would implore that APAC, consider whether they should, a new approach should be considered and take it going forward. So, of course, I respect your decision, but I would like that to be looked at moving forward if there needs to be any adjustment to how this is reviewed. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, so you had indicated that perhaps you'd be able to come back with another plan. Are you thinking next month? And our next meeting would be it'd be February. Let's see. The second Thursday of the month, so that would be February 13th. And we would be looking for information provided to the committee. I believe it's 2 weeks before, so a packet, we'd be looking for a plan in the packet by January 30th.
Yes, I did want to ask, if we could bifurcate, the special events, permit, and we absolutely will, make sure that this gets resolved and, but this has been kind of holding up our application for the events. So
I see.
I'm just asking if that would be possible.
Okay, so you're requesting that the committee bifurcate the project
Yes,
so that the special events could move forward and as we work through the compliance issue with the uniform rules.
yes, and knowing that we will be, following up with an additional application for the farm stay. So
Mhm.
we're still here. We're around. We're not gonna, and it has to go to the zoning administrator, so it's gonna take some time, but we just want to be able to get past
Mhm.
this step.
Okay. I hear your request. Let me take that to the committee members. Any committee members have any thoughts on that? Level of comfort of bifurcating the project?
I guess my one concern is, and then thinking about how we have tried to address different areas on other contracts, trying to bring it in production off, thinking of one we just had recently on the south side of the river a couple of months ago here, off South Refugio. They brought into production some flat areas that were fenced in and around the 2-acre envelope area in order to bring those into production. And so I just bring that up because that area on this map that's in red, the red polygon, the lawn area by the villa, is where they want to do the events. But it's also a flat area that potentially could be brought into some acreage for commercial production if you're looking to balance some of these uses across the property. And so that would just be my only hesitation to not bifurcate. If those lands need to be brought into that calculus somehow of what could be brought in, feasibly brought into production. It might be some small, half an acre here or 3/4 of an acre there that you get to that point. And so I just want to bring that up of whether or not the committee thinks that's a factor that may be in play that we may not want to bifurcate at this point in time.
If I may chime in, sorry, that's a lawn area it's part of the residential envelope. It's part of the house. It's their front yard of the house. It's been a lawn area. It's never been under production. That would never be put into vines. It's the
Thank you.
yard for the guest house. house.
Any other comments from committee members?
As far as the 2-acre envelope,
It would have to be
envelope.
less than 2, I think, in this case.
because of the prime, right?
It's 3% of 62, I think.
So 54, I believe. At least the
52.
map shows 54 net. So that would be 3% of that would be the development envelope. So I don't know if you ever seen the calculation for the,
I think we did early on and it was meeting the calculation,
including
including
the,
the lawn area and.
oh,
and
okay,
the
so your
villa.
concern was this could be.
It was just
used to-
whether or not, yeah, I mean, if there were, in other circumstances and other contract examples, some of those areas had been brought into production. So if it was, and that was the choice of the landowner. And obviously, this is has historically and is going to continue as a lawn area. And within the envelope allowance, that's fine. I think if it's just an area that we would not look at in potential bringing other areas into production. So I did have a question on for Francisco. So are you converting this application from a minor conditional use permit to a zoning clearance application?
No, what we've asked them, the agent, is to submit additional information both for the farm stay and the camping operations so that we can determine, more than likely, they're going to be separate applications. The events will continue as an MCUP and the camping, if they can fit it, would be a ZCI, as well as the farm stay would be a ZCI.
But for the small scale events in AEO, the majority of instances, it's been downshifted to a zoning clearance. There are still some instances where it would be a minor CUP. So that's what the question I was asking is that I believe this property, if it was pursuing these special events under the AEO, it would be a zoning clearance rather than the minor CUP.
I believe based on the number of attendees, which is proposed at 200, they would elevate it to an MCUP in this case.
Okay, okay. Okay, so going back to, I guess, the question of the bifurcation.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if there's any other input from committee members on that. The bifurcation question that was proposed.
I think I'm hearing about the home site, and I hear what David is saying about that flat grass area that is claimed to be the part of the home site. I think at this time, because it's early on in the year, and we have time for the non-renewal process. If this, now I'm just thinking about the worst case scenario where they don't plant anything on that 2-acre portion of the property, and this committee recommends non-renewal. That would be the worst case scenario, right? I'm thinking, okay, well, the non-renewal becomes effective on January 1st of next year, January 1st, 2026. Based on calculations, we've determined that, this committee makes these recommendations by June or July. I don't remember. I think we have at least half of this year to determine whether this committee will determine that this is a non-compliance and then recommend non-renewal. So all that being said, I think that we have time I would be okay with bifurcating the item, provided that within, I want to make sure that during these first 6 months of this year, we come to a conclusion to the compliance question of this contract. So that would be my suggestion. That would be my personal assessor's position.
I'm trying to remember some previous cases, and I guess for the committee, it's important to stay consistent on these decisions. I do remember we bifurcated similar cases, and then we talked about the compliance later. So I could support Sergio's position to bifurcate and keep discussing the compliance part.
And I'm fine if that's, the direction the rest of the committee wants to go on the bifurcation. I think, and that's a good point that Alex brought in, thinking about being consistent. I think one of the factors that I'm okay with bifurcating is that the use for it's agendized that we're looking at, the events, it's not creating new structures, it's not taking land out of production, it's within the already envelope for the home site. Comparatively, and this is just a hypothetical, if we had an application in for small scale campground and we're still looking at ongoing eligibility, that use comes into play with other portions of the uniform rules that I think are integrally tied, and I wouldn't feel comfortable separating those discussions. And so I think there's a distinction between this use and its ongoing compatibility doesn't affect the ability, because down the road, not just this property, but down the road, when properties are in non-renewal, they still need to comply with the uniform rules. And so if we, at some point, there's Joe Smith has a contract that's a non-renewal, but he wants to do a small scale campground. If he's not meeting some other requirements, then that plays into whether or not that use would be allowed because it's still under contract. And so it's likely we're going to entertain or see examples of that down the road. But I think I just wanted to point it out that for this instance, I feel more comfortable bifurcating because the use of the events in and of themselves are not going to create a direct conflict with the other consideration of the ongoing eligibility that we still need to face. So I guess that's a long-winded way of saying I'm okay with the bifurcation.
I just wanted to pause for a second and clarify if the applicant and the landowner who are on, just to clarify for you, part of the discussion, if you didn't know, is that in these instances where if there is a inconsistency with the uniform rules, as the APAC determines, we can't come to resolution, our next step is usually to recommend that the contract be non-renewed, and there's a process that we go through for that. So if you were not aware of that, that's basically the Apex enforcement tool is that county-initiated non-renewal process. So I wanted you to be aware of that. It was talked about, maybe you didn't know that already.
Yeah, no, we understand, and we absolutely will be in compliance. It was just a matter of getting this clarification from you guys.
Yeah, and also
planting that 2 acres is not gonna, that's not gonna want to get out of the contract.
well, and also that if the contract is in non-renewal, it still is technically required to be consistent with the uniform rules.
Correct. It takes like 10 years to get out. of it.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct. And I wanted to also bring in any comments that Royce, our colleague who is attending remotely, did you have any input on this, Royce, or any thoughts you wanted to share regarding the project or specifically the bifurcation question?
I am comfortable with bifurcation with all the comments that everyone has made, Alex and Sergio and David. So I would feel comfortable to go ahead with that.
Okay. And on my end, I concur with my committee members on that bifurcation, and unless there's any other discussion we'd like to make at this point, if there's a motion, we need to make a motion to bifurcate.
Yeah, I can start that.
Okay.
So we'll have several
right.
motions here. So the
Yes.
first motion is to bifurcate action to take separate consideration of the application for special events and bifurcate that from the ongoing eligibility discussion.
I'll second.
Okay, we'll do roll call. Sergio Ricardo,
Aye.
Stephanie Stark,
Aye.
David Lackey.
Aye.
Alex,
Aye.
and then Royce Larson.
Aye.
The vote carries 5-0.
Okay, and then we have probably two more motions. So
Mhm.
the next motion I would make that the committee find the request for special events on contract 77 AP 032 is consistent with the uniform rules.
I
Second.
would second.
Okay, we'll do roll call. Sergio Ricardo,
Aye.
Stephanie Stark,
Aye.
David Lackey,
Aye.
Alex.
Aye.
And then Royce Larson,
Aye.
and the vote carries 5-0.
And then the last motion I would make is that we continue consider,
Pause that motion.
yes.
I wanted, before we make our third motion, just wanted to check in with the applicant, because what we're about to do is make a motion to have the item come back to the committee. Can you make it to the next February meeting? And
Yes,
provide
let's-
us.
we'll plan on making that. If for some reason it doesn't work, we'll let our planner know by next week if we need an extra month. But if we could get on the next one, that would be great.
Yeah,
The 13th.
yes, the 13th, and we'd be looking for a site plan and
Yes.
planting information. Okay, to be clear.
And to be further clear, you're looking for a planting plan of this 2 acres.
Correct,
And a schedule.
although it really helps to have the whole plan, you know. so
Yes,
that
we'll
site-
have that, but it's
It-
for this flat area that had previously been under. production.
Yes, but we would want to have a distinction of what's currently planted and then what is being proposed.
Yes,
For
and we
planting,
show
for
that on
production.
the other plan sheets, so we would just add this as additionally.
Yes,
planted.
and clear calculations on acreages
Yes.
and also any proposed plantings, receipts, and when they would be planted, and a good faith effort.
Yes, understood.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Thanks for that clarification. So the next motion would be that we continue consideration of ongoing eligibility for contract 77 AP 032 and continue it to our February 13th APAC meeting to provide opportunity for the applicant to provide additional planting plan information and site plan for meeting the commercial ag production requirements.
Second.
And then we'll start with roll call. Sergio Ricardo.
Aye.
Stephanie Stark,
Aye.
David Lackey.
Aye.
Alex.
Aye.
And then Royce Larson.
Aye.
The vote carries 5-0.
Okay, thank you very much for your, the interactive process. I think it's helpful and hopefully we provided you with some clarification. Thank you for attending and we will see you at the next month's meeting.
Okay, bye.
All right, thank you. All right, this brings us to our next agenda item. We are trailing item 2, so this brings us to a new item, which is item number 3, the Landon Equestrian LLC Equestrian Arena. This is for Ag Preserve number 96 AP 005. Tatiana Cruz is our planner from the county, and I believe Brett Jones is joining us remotely. And if that's the case, Mr. Jones, if you could provide us with an overview of the project.
Sure. Good morning, everyone, and
Good
happy New
morning.
Year. Teresa, would you mind going to the second sheet? This probably will look familiar to you all. I believe you all were on the meeting I think it was last June, where we approved a large equipment storage building garage for trucks and trailers for this equestrian facility. And we had a couple meetings kind of going over the irrigation and the pasture orchard grass that is required for this equestrian operation. It's on baseline. It's a 50-acre parcel. At the time, I believe I mentioned that we would be coming back with a development plan for a large covered arena. And that is what we're here for today. We have submitted that development plan. We wanted to wait until the storage building was approved. It is currently under construction. We've started the grading, but now because the length of a development plan, we paused that submittal. But now we're in for that, and you'll see that 45,000 square foot covered arena there on that western boundary, kind of middle of the page there. So we are again 50-acre parcel. We have about 30 acres in irrigated pasture and orchard grass. We there is no personal use on the property. We do have 2 ag employee dwellings, and I did submit those W-2s. Actually, last time I didn't resubmit those, unfortunately, but we do have those uses have continued, and provided all the planting information. In terms of the uniform rules, I'm calculating that we are for total permitted improvements for a principal boarding and breeding facility. We're at now about 1.54 acres when we include the existing development and the acre for this new arena, which is I think I calc that the allowance would be about 10 acres, so we're well under that amount. Let's see, what else can I go over? Water, we have on-site well. I'm showing the irrigation lines here. I think last time you'll probably remember we showed pictures of the well and all the irrigation. Everything's in now and it has been planted. I think that's probably everything.
Okay, thank you, Brett. Is there any input from Tatiana? Would you like to add anything?
Hi, this is Steve Connor. Actually, we have switched planners, signed planners. So
Okay, thank you,
because
Mr.
I handle
Connor.
I
Did
handle
you
the
have anything to
previous
add?
kit. I don't believe I have anything to add to this one.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Is there any questions from committee members?
Brett, I may have skimmed over, you may have already stated it, and I do recall the property and previously we were wanting information on the installation of the irrigation system. Did you state that irrigation system is in place now, or is it?
Yes,
To be, okay.
it is.
And how does this premises interact with the premises that's immediately to the west? I think it's the same owner. It looks like
Correct.
it's almost, seamlessly integrated with equestrian facilities as well. Is it run as sort of a combined operation?
Yeah, in fact, it is. Yeah, that property, we just haven't done any new development there, but yes, it's an extension of this. He doesn't live on that property either. It does have some personal use over there. I know it has a main house. I believe it has a guest house as well, but
As far as the equestrian operation, it looks like that property there's been a lot of improvements in the last 2 years in terms of the pastures and paddocks and things like that. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yeah, I haven't actually done any work over there, but yeah, I believe they've done a lot of pasture work there.
Brett, this is Sergio. I have a question. You're showing on this, on what's on the screen right now, that the employee homes, maybe an employee dwelling is located. Is it part of a barn, or it's kind of small? I
No,
think I
if we-
read.
Yeah, if we can blow it up, there's two. They are manufactured homes, and they're the two furthest in the southeast corner. The lines kind of cross here, but see those? Yeah, those two exactly.
Okay, I see them. And that was going to be my second question, because our record, the assessor records, did show 2 mobile homes. And I was wondering if the mobile homes were removed. It does seem that there were some structures that were removed. If you look at the aerial, can you?
Yeah, there was one other structure that is just to the west of that hay barn.
Uh-huh.
There was another structure there that was removed. And that might have even been a manufactured home as well.
Okay. Because
Yeah, it was right there.
Yeah, this is a more recent aerial. But if we look at, I was looking at the older one that the assessor's office has been using. There was another structure.
Yeah, I think when this property owner purchased it, it was another manufactured home that had been permitted, but it was so dilapidated he removed it.
He removed it. Okay. But the 2
Yeah,
still
you'll see
remain.
it. Exactly. Those are still there and occupied.
Perfect. Okay.
And I just brought this up more for context because I had mentioned the property to the west, and so this is where the proposed arena is going to be. This is the edge of the contract over here, but this is a separate contract under the same owner. But that's why my question is, it looks like it's been more recently developed or redeveloped as an equestrian facility, and so hence my questions in terms of, are they kind of operated as
Right.
under the same kind of operation? So
My question is, how did you get this most recent?
this is just Google. Yeah, this is
Oh,
just
Google Earth.
Google Earth.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So this, I believe, is
So we're still using.
April of 2024.
Right. Yeah, no more questions for me.
Any more questions from committee members? Okay, Royce, anything on your end?
Well, I have one that's actually for Sergio. Have they submitted their yearly annual report?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think they did. And I think we have the last one that was submitted by the current owner, I believe. And the assumption was recorded. I reported the assumption of the contract last month. So yeah, everything is in order. Thank you.
and in good standing.
Always.
Just wanted to take a pause and see if there's anyone from the public who'd like to speak on this item. No one here in the,
And we do not have any
Thanks.
public comment.
okay, very good. Thank you. And we'll close public comment.
Not seeing any other questions or comments. I'll attempt a motion here. So make a motion that the committee find the request for covered equestrian arena consistent with the uniform rules. In particular, Uniform Rule 2-3.2, principal boarding and breeding. And the committee finds that contract 96 AP 005 meets ongoing eligibility requirements.
I'll second.
And then Sergio Ricardo,
Aye.
Stephanie Stark.
Aye.
David Lackey.
Aye.
Alex,
Aye.
and then Royce Larson.
Aye.
The vote carries 5-0 to approve.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you very much for attending.
We'll be seeing a lot of you. I have literally, I think, 30 people or projects ready that are in Williamson Act for the AEO.
It's the new wave. It's like when we had all the cannabis applications. We're gonna
Yes.
probably have to have special hearings for
Yes.
volume.
It'll be a
It's
busy
gonna be an
year.
interesting year.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you, Brad.
Bye.
Happy
Bye.
New Year.
Okay, so that takes us to item number 2, which is the APAC Temporary Ad Hoc Subcommittee and presentation to the board. I put this item on here. I wanted to hopefully let me get my documents together as I switch over from looking at projects. Hold on a moment. So we, last meeting, we talked about this item and we discussed just preliminary going to the board. We created an ad hoc subcommittee and we also, Sergio and I met and I wanted to provide the committee just with an update on our subcommittee meeting. And I was hoping to achieve today was discussion of a timeline. Sergio and I had discussed in general some topics that would be on the presentation, and the third thing is I wanted to see, based on the timeline, if there's any additional special meetings that we need to have and to meet our proposed timeline that we came up with. And what you see up there on the board is actually, or on the screen, that's something that I put together. I put together 2 documents. One was just a framework of putting together information for what, if we were to put something together for a timeline, which is the most aggressive timeline would be to have a board hearing on the March 4th. And I was working off of just the initial request from the board, which was to come early in 2025. And early is hard to meet when you have the holidays and family friendly and all that kind of stuff. So I put together a general timeline, but that's what I wanted to talk about. And the topics were this, and then I sent another document to you. Did you get that, Teresa? Yeah. So this is overview of some topics we came up with based, I grouped them by subject, and I haven't put slides together yet, but just thinking about how long the presentation might be, how many slides, and just wanted to get some content ideas down. And then with that input from the full committee, then go back to the drawing board, work with Sergio, my subcommittee representative, and put together some slides and have that reviewed by the committee. I wasn't sure as far as the board letter went, if that also needs to be reviewed by the committee or not. I don't know what the requirement or even what the request is from the committee, but for the board letter.
Generally, no. It doesn't
Okay.
have to be, I mean, you're certainly welcome to
Okay.
just come straight from the chair.
All right, very good. So with that, before kind of we tackle any of the other aspects of this, did you have anything to add, Sergio?
No, I'll add this. I was surprised, and I shouldn't be I'm surprised at how much this is new to the Board of Supervisors. Like they don't know, and I'm happy that we are meeting with them and let them know what we do and the basics of our what we do here, our committee. And so this is how I see it. I see it as more of a educating the board on the program, the Ag Preserve, and what we do as a committee here. So that's how I'm seeing it. And when I explained briefly, when I explained it to my manager, they're okay with us participating in this. You know, if I can just simplify it by saying, you know, this education to the Board of Supervisors. So just that's where I'm at. I continue to meet with my. I'll be having a meeting with the chief assessor today, this afternoon, to bring him up to speed. And I think this is all good in terms of education.
Any other comments or thoughts?
If I could, I have a question if I could.
Yes, of course.
We as a board make recommendations, which then goes to the Board of Supervisors for the actual approval. And the Board of Supervisors have the potential to approve it or not. But if they don't know what we do and they don't know about APAC, how can they actually approve anything? And where does that fit in our responsibility? And I'll put it back on you, Madam Chair, and Sergio as the representatives versus, I mean, and I agree with Sergio, they need to be educated and so on, but is there any implications that we need to worry about?
That is a good question, Royce. If I may just say something, I may have exaggerated when I said they don't know anything. I mean, I think they do have a basic idea of what we do. But, you know, again, I think they just see us as an advisory committee, and they just go along most of the time. I think almost 99% of the time with what we recommend. I think that like what happened at the October meeting is what brought up, you know, a few more questions that they that kind of showed some lack of understanding and but anyway, I think they do have some basic idea of what we do. But it's a good question, Royce. It's a good comment that you make.
I mean, Stephanie and I typically, maybe we try to do once a year, sometimes not that frequent, but we do a Williamson Act training for development review. And we even try to streamline it, but it's easy to get. There's a lot of information. And so I think that's kind of one of the things just to be cognizant. It's like, you have high level, you know, what are the most important things to touch upon at a high level? And so I know that you're thinking about that and just And certainly I think there's some core things about, what it is. I think with that is kind of an important principle of the whole program is that they're getting a preferential tax assessment for these reasons. And those are important reasons and that distinguish it from another piece of ag land. That they're getting a benefit, but they have an obligation to meet certain things. I think part of, and then part of I anticipate that part of on the back end, some of the interests of the board members is how much, and this can be very, easy to get into the weeds, but maybe it doesn't have to be. But, there's obviously some things that are very specific in the Williamson Act legislation that come from the legislation that we incorporate in their uniform rules. And then there's also a big portion that it leaves it up to the board members to determine what are the compatible uses and set those standards. And so I think that's an important aspect that, the board does have the ability to interpret what's compatible or what allowances would be allowed on contracted land. And that's how they see it as some of, like the AEO is the most recent example of that, as new uses and making that determination of at what level. I think that'll be an important thing. In terms of data, I'm thinking that if we can get some basic data to show like a trend, like over the, this is over the last 10 years, how much land has been under contract or, so that, we were at 550,000 and now, it's trending, in a direction, so maybe it's, some basic data that we can have a graph or something just to show the trend. Going back to that October meeting, obviously there was a slug of backlogged non-renewals that were before them. But maybe it might, if we look at kind of the last 10 years to say, okay, of the county initiated non-renewals, what was really the basis for that? What, we had there, the pie chart, 30% are typically for this reason or that reason. So that we could just characterize, what are some of the general reasons, common reasons where we see and it leads to a recommendation for non-renewal. It could either be not meeting your commercial ag production or just non-responsiveness or multiple owners in a contract and not getting, so I think there's, 4 or 5 different reasons. So that would be helpful, I think.
You mentioned the trend, that like a 10-year trend. Is that a trend of non-renewals?
I think from that you can kind of see, because we're getting a mix of new contracts and non-renewals. So at least you can kind of see a trend.
Idea. It puts it into context,
Yeah.
that October meeting.
Right. So even though you see a slug overall, it's a slight, 3% decrease over
Yeah.
time or something.
That's great. Very helpful.
I don't know how much of the history, but and I don't know who we would reach out to. In my mind, I'm thinking, is there somebody in the CEO's office that can be a touch point to say, asking them, are we missing something that they think the board wants information on or hearing?
Well, I do have a meeting scheduled tomorrow with Planning Development, Lisa, and also your chief assessor I'm also meeting with him, and also our commissioner. And I wanted to see also if you, Alex wanted me to reach out to anybody in your team just to give them an update, because it's been since October that this came up. I just wanted to let them know, here's what we're doing, here's what we're planning, here's some key topics and any holes that we might have. And perhaps you're right, maybe the CEO is something they would like us to.
And I bring it up because, again, it's one of those, you can go back into the history in the weeds, but on the financial side of this,
Yeah.
I think the CEO's office may be
Mhm.
having a lens or wanting information to, because it's a policy decision, particularly since, back when Governor Brown during the budget crises, got rid of the subvention funds for participating
We
jurisdictions.
should mention that.
That's, and we
Mhm.
typically, I think, Sergio, we would get around like 550,000 or $600,000 generally. We used to
every
roughly.
year. Mhm.
So I think that's a good point. And then, since then, a lot of the jurisdiction, particularly, jurisdictions that received several $1 million in subventions
Mhm.
to continue with the program, it raised a big policy consideration and then changes in state law at least provided an opportunity that they could, modify their program. Some decided not to accept new contracts. But
Even
obviously there's a lot of positive policy reasons why the county of Santa Barbara continues to do this, because it provides benefit to the landowners and the agricultural economy and other things. But there is an assessment component to that. And so I know in the past, and I don't, this is obviously something you need to talk with your managers about, and I don't know if it's sensitivity, but in the past, the assessors would have, just for like the committee, some general reports like, okay, if all of these, this is sort of like the Prop 13 value of all of the lands in ag preserve contract, and this is sort of the delta. If we
Yeah.
stop doing this, what would be that
Right
assessment
up there.
difference? And so,
That's and I didn't provide this ahead of time, but
right.
I just was putting it together before we got started here. But that 1, 2, 3, fourth bullet down under statistics, I was thinking the same thing, and that's what Sergio brought up. I don't know if that gets to it, but the Prop 13 value versus the roll
role
value.
value. Mhm.
And what that law, I think that would really be.
Right. And it doesn't, and I think probably what the board would say is that, yeah, we still put a high priority as a county from policy of having this program. We do that with the knowledge that it has these implications. Therefore, if we want to continue with this program, we want to make sure that the people who are doing ag, people that are benefit that aren't doing it. What can we do? What are our tools to address those, pot of thing?
Yeah.
And so I think there's probably that component.
Was there anything that you wanted to mention, Alex, or Royce, or anybody else before we?
I agree about the education part, especially we have a new District 1
Mhm.
board member.
Yep.
So it's gonna be useful. And my experience from dealing with other commissions with LAFCO, and I remember it's very beneficial to actually, because I do some work for LAFCO, and it hasn't been a while, but I would go and present to the commission what we do for them, although it's kind of ongoing process. So I'm sure we can learn a lot from board's perspective as much as they can learn from ours, what we do actually. But I kind of disagree that they don't know what we are doing. You'd be surprised how much they actually know. At least some board members about our work. And I wanted to ask you, there's usually a CEO's office assistant who oversees certain departments. I know Wade is for public works.
Yes, Wade
So
Horton.
he would be probably the person to check
Mhm.
with and
Okay.
get input. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I still have to talk to my director about this. So thanks for reminding me.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, but thank you, Royce, for bringing that up. And I think, yeah, if you hadn't watched what transpired, it was, I mean, one of the supervisors, I think it was Lavagnino, said that his whole time there, he's never seen anyone come to the board to give an overview, or it hasn't really ever come up. So maybe there's more than they realize
Yeah.
It comes through other,
Yeah, every few years, I think it's very beneficial.
yes, I think so.
To just continue doing this.
Yeah. So today what we was hoping to achieve was just go through some of the ideas, the concepts. And then also a timeline. And I think that's really critical. I don't have as much experience as probably David and maybe you others with putting together board letters, especially one with PowerPoint presentation, but I believe I had Teresa, we have our the board's schedule before us and we can look at that when we're ready. But for now, let's I just want to look at content and then really nail down some dates. If we have to do special meetings, we may have to do that because as County Council has reminded us, we have to make sure that we're in line with the Brown Act. So it's a little tricky to do something like this with a whole committee, but I appreciate everybody's flexibility. And we're ready to get started. At the top, before we get into the timeline, I thought if we could talk about this, I think this is a little bit easier. There's more information fleshed out, but I was thinking, and I'll get some more input tomorrow from Lisa, Planning Development, and then Michael at Assessor's Office and on my director, Jose. But I was thinking, something like this. What I heard was they wanted a Williamson Act 101. I think the actual minute order is stated that the directive to, remind you is that they wanted in early 2025 for staff to return. It was 3 things they mentioned. One was the agricultural preserve contract compliance and non-compliance report. Okay, I'll let that lay there. Number 2 is the treasurer tax collector to review non-compliance contracts still receiving tax breaks. So I was interpreting that as the assessor.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And number 3 is a report on the Williamson Act. So those were the 3 things, and it's up to us to kind of interpret that, what we kind of think that means. But in general, I've heard phrases like, a Williamson Act 101 was brought up. So what we're looking at, like David had said, is really high level, I think, overview. If they want more, they can let us know. I think we keep it, as brief as we can, give them the content they're looking for. So I was thinking 10 to 15 minutes with some questions, maybe 8 to 10 slides, maybe plus a cover and closing slide. Those are the 2 extra, but a basic overview, my thinking, and I thought we decided that this was an agreement on this, but correct me if I'm wrong, this was going to be something where all committee members would be present. I think that would be ideal. It would show, I think it would be good for the whole committee to attend for practical purposes. If there's any questions, then if it's in your subject matter, then you can answer those at the board hearing. So it'd be important that we're all available, whatever date we pick. And then you scroll up a little bit to the top there. Thank you, Teresa.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Is there a way to put what you have on the screen so I can view it in Zoom?
Oh, yes, we're working on that. Sorry, Royce. Okay. Can we go back up to the top, please? Thank you. Okay, so we did introduce committee members and what was the introduction? Oh, and just overview of why we're there for the day, purpose of our presentation, just to provide an overview of the Williamson Act, and we'll have our minute order there. But I was thinking for some kind of initial overview of just, I think there was some confusion I heard about the difference between the Williamson Act, the Ag Preserve Program, LCA. Those are all different terms, like what those mean and how the uniform rules interplay with that. So they're an interpretation of the Williamson Act. They are kind of like analogous to laws and regulations. So I think that that needed some clarification, so I put that in as an overview. And these aren't sequential. We could change the order. These are just my thoughts. General statistics, I think, are helpful. The number of acreages under contract, a number of parcels under contract, number of contracts that we have. Perhaps we cover active and those in non-renewal. Also helpful, I think, is the prop value we talked about, like that, weave that into the presentation. And also an overview map, which I'd be probably asking, some of these items, the data would have to be asking other committee members for. So perhaps we can tap your resources, David,
Yeah, if we have
providing a
any,
map.
Do some mapping.
That would be terrific. And then I also heard, I think, David, the subvention funds, I think, would be very helpful piece of information. Even mentioned that, I had forgotten that, but that's a good piece of information, like what year that went out, how much were we getting at the time? We're no longer getting that. It paints a full picture.
Sorry to interject.
No, please.
But just like one wording thing that might be good that I've always hung my hat on when trying to characterize the importance of the Williamson Act is that when you read just some of the background of the establishment of it, it was so important that they had to do an amendment to the California Constitution to give landowners this preferential tax assessment. When you say that, you know, there was some seriousness to it. You had to amend the Constitution to give them this specific right that others don't. And so I always thought that that was a good point to tag on to it.
Okay.
And that amendment,
Know, like what the amendment was or anything to.
I mean, it was, I could try to look in
Yeah.
my files, but
and I was just going to add that the amendment was done even before Proposition 13 came into effect.
Oh, really?
So,
yeah, so it was the
we've been
original LCA as part of the Land Conservation Act. They
1968,
amended the California Constitution to give this preferential tax assessment for people that voluntarily enter into the program.
That's profound. Yeah. Very good.
So,
Yes.
as part of the statistics, is this where you want to see the trend, you know, the
Yes.
increases and the decreases? I could probably show that based on the number of contracts that we've been.
That would be terrific. Have some sort of graphic that we could pop into a slide.
Yeah, I mean, if you just have the basic, I was just even thinking just like the annual Williamson Act contract, you know, summary, it has a total of how many acres.
Right.
You know, so maybe if we
Yeah.
just go back for 10 or 12 years and then we can create a
Yeah.
chart showing that trend.
Right. I do have that information that I can provide. In
Okay.
terms of, and I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
No, please.
In terms of the question about the assessment, about, I forget how it was worded, the report on, you know, of the non-compliance or incompliance or something. I forget how it's worded on the minute.
Yeah, in the minute order, it was treasurer and tax collector to review non-compliance contracts still receiving tax breaks.
And so
There was also a compliance and non-compliance report.
I think that's where I'm a little bit confused. Is that what information did they need? I mean, all of whether they're in compliance or non-compliance, they're all getting some benefit, maybe not as much if you're in non-compliance. If we put the, well, I guess I'm confusing it with non-renewal versus active contracts.
One of the things I think I heard, I don't know if it was outside of that meeting, but related to the meeting was presumably since we've recommended non-renewal, there's some type of non-compliance. And then maybe some of those had occurred for many years. And is there any, one of the questions may be, are they interested, are there any tools that the county has to retroactively
Yes.
recoup some of that preferential tax assessment they were receiving that they shouldn't have been receiving? And that's kind of a big umbrella question, but, it's maybe one of those, well, I don't know about the mechanisms of what we do have, but I think another component maybe that leads into that is that we really, as a collective group and our responsibilities, we really don't do active enforcement.
That was.
So that's a big principle. These are the touch points where we do have opportunities to confirm ongoing eligibility or not. And so I think it's good to kind of state that so they understand that we don't do active, but we do have these touch points where we have the opportunity to see if there's an issue. And then there's a process if there is an issue.
Perhaps statewide programs in other counties, how do they fare?
Like the Ventura one. I mean,
Yeah, and so this is where the Ventura
That's
County.
Good information for them
Right.
to provide a direction or have some idea.
I was digging through some old emails and I found how they came to that point where where Ventura County is non-renewing people that don't respond to the annual questionnaire. I have it, but I didn't know how much of that we need to share with the Board of Supervisors.
I think given this is an overview, I would keep that like in your, I'm putting down notes on background research, the things that we should know about. If we're asked about, we could always say there are counties with other programs. We're happy to come back or provide, because I think that's something that we could.
Right. So basically then what we're saying is what David just said, that we're not actively enforcing non-compliance.
right. And just so they know the touch points of where we do have, there's occasion where the assessor, is looking at transactions with real property, or we're looking, you look at an aerial photo and there's some indication of potential non-compliance, and then that comes to the committee or the annual survey, the importance of, one stating what the importance of the annual survey is, and we have historically very low compliance. And that has been, one of the reasons for recommending non-renewal in recent years. But yeah, so I think, kind of just the touch points of, even all of the items that come to APAC on our agenda, it's not only to review that application, but also the contract in its total for ongoing eligibility. That's really the main point where we can confirm.
I don't think that's understood it at all. Teresa, could we float the doc up to basic contract and just, there you go. So this is a couple things along lines what you guys were saying. So basic contracts, they have to be compliance with the uniform rules, even if they are in non-renewal, they still have to be consistent. That the land conservation is in exchange for a property tax break, and that's where we could really fold in some helpful information, like we have above about the Prop 13 versus the roll value. It's a voluntary program that they are a 10-year rolling renewal unless an actual step is taken to non-renew the contract. I just think in general, there's some confusion about a non-renewal versus cancellation. I think people say cancellation just thinking, but we think of it as a capital C. I mean, it's got a very distinct, there's distinct processes for both of those. And that the contracts, they run with the land, or that they're issued to the landowner, or not to the landowner, but to the land. So when you buy a property, you assume the contract. Not everybody knows that they're getting a property under contract, or it isn't acknowledged or by the new owners all the time. They're not always understanding that. And that non-renewals can be initiated by the landowner or the county. And there's some notes in there about that annual Williamson Act income and production questionnaire. I just put a couple notes. You can ignore those about when they're sent out, when they're returned. We might get follow-up questions about that. And that there's no stated enforcement in the uniform rules about submitting those. But we could add something about what the committee is doing and fold that concept in, or wait until we're asked more questions. And we have that Prop 13 comment in there, and also, let's see, oh, this is something you had added, Sergio, is that at a caveat that if it's, the economic value is higher than the Prop 13, then the tax on the Prop 13, it may be no benefit. So landowners, that's sometimes what prompts a non-renewal. Or maybe they just decide not to go into the program at all. We definitely get a lot of questions about that. And then we got rid of the Ag Preserve program, then those Prop 13 values, I think that was something that is really helpful to see. Yeah, if we got rid of the program, what would it look like? I don't know what that 5.2 BS 2.9.
Millions. So
Oh,
that was-
okay.
Yeah.
My note, okay.
Yeah, that was the,
Sergio, a little?
Yeah.
sure. So, every year I share this report with the auditors, because they like to see what the Proposition 13 values would be if there was no program. And so, this is, I think, 2024 data that I
Okay.
provided you.
Oh, yes.
Stephanie, I think, where the Proposition 13 assessments would total 5.2 billion. This is including all the contracts, all the parcels in the contract. So if there was no Williamson Act, if there was no Ag Preserve in our county, this would be the value that we would be collecting taxes on, versus 2.9 billion, which is what we are enrolling because these properties are in Ag Preserve. 1%. Yeah, 1%. So it'd be collecting, I don't know what 1% of 5 billion is. 5 million? I don't know.
So we would be, the 5.2 billion is what we would be collecting in property tax
If there was no,
no Williamson
Preserve,
Act. or
correct.
Ag Preserve.
But
And
because
instead
there-
we get 2.9.
instead we get 2.9.
Okay, so we're losing out on 2 point something billion.
Mhm.
Because of Prop 13 or
Because
Well,
because of the tax breaks that the risk preferential assessment,
that much?
not much.
Yeah, that seems staggering. We're going to have to include.
So
that.
Well, obviously 2% of that, right? Is that what you said? 1%?
1%.
Oh, 1% of that.
Basic
Okay.
tax from your assessed value is 1%. That's the basic. Of course, then you pay other
Local
fixed,
assessments.
yeah, local assessments, fixed charges.
I think we need a number. I think we should get that
Need-
1% and
Sure.
put that in there so we can say to the board, here's how much money that we're getting in.
We're actually
property tax.
collecting in tax.
And if there was no Williamson Act or Ag Preserve program, this is how much, so they see. the
think that would
real
have
dollars.
more
They would ask. If they
impact.
don't say that, they probably would ask anyways.
I think
It's a
so.
Key
I
question
think-
for them.
But that, yeah, throwing out those big numbers, it needs to be, I mean, that's probably one of the massaging messages with the CEO's office that how you would want to
Oh,
paint that.
yes.
Because it,
This is why I'm having the initial meeting with these, well, because I started talking to my director, like, I don't want to go way out of here if someone's unaware of these figures. So I think,
With-
I agree 100%. Yes.
With the budget being very tight, they're gonna, their eyes are gonna go into dollar signs and they're gonna say, ooh,
right, yeah.
There's
And
the-
obviously, there's important policy reasons
Huh.
that benefit other than financial of having those lands in ag.
correct.
Yes, and that, I don't, I just want to run that through people
It's
above
not-
me
yeah.
to make sure they're
It's
aware.
not a zero sum. It's like, okay,
Right.
we're gonna have all this money if we just get rid of the program.
Yes, yes. 100%. Okay, so moving on, just
Madam-
additional, oh, Royce, any comments on that? I didn't wanted to
I'll
make
just
sure.
make one quick comment. I've got access, and maybe you guys have seen it, but the California Ag, the University Journal, put out an article on what if we didn't have the Williamson Act and the economic benefits.
Did you
as-
just email that to me?
As well, yes. and
Yes,
as
okay.
well as a thesis at Cal Poly that covered that same topic.
Oh,
I
interesting.
emailed both of those to you, Adam,
Okay,
and I included Teresa because I didn't have everyone else's emails.
okay, thank you.
Hmm.
Very timely. Thank you, Royce.
Just taking a step back from those big numbers, I mean, maybe weaving in, because I know it took a while for me to understand it too, but just that preferential assessment, they're getting assessed on the agricultural value, not on the structures or the other, making a distinction between what they get preferential tax assessment and what they don't. That
Yes,
would be
that's
good for them
exactly
to.
what
understand.
I think that's very helpful. I'm adding these notes into my,
So it's around 23 million a year.
That's what we're
Yeah, would be one.
leaving out.
what's that? Oh, okay. Okay. Anything, I wanted to ask, from the surveyor's perspective or from Royce, your perspective that we should include on basic, I'm sure you will think of that, but those were two areas that I was thinking maybe I'm missing something. I don't have anything in here yet, but as subject matter experts on those, just think of anything from maybe the surveyor's office that you think would be very helpful for the board to know. And then I'll look through what you had sent, Royce, of course, and see if I can find anything in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't know how important would be anything about the, parcel validity, about the parcels in contracts must be created legally, and there's
Legal parcels.
yeah, and there's a lot of Chapter 21 parts in lot line adjustments that pertain to uniform rules and land in contracts. There's a lot of requirements there that need to be met before we can adjust the boundary of a contract. So, I don't know, is it important in any? Yeah, it's kind of small details, but if anybody asks why is the surveyor there, I think
Yeah, yes.
the important part is to know about that.
Yes, and I'm glad that the next item on,
Perhaps adding the legal descriptions that are being prepared for the contracts are prepared by the county surveyor. So that's kind of what they see usually when they get the package for approval.
And you guys, the surveyor confirms whether it's a legal lot, which is one of the main requirements, whether.
Not in that process of preparing legal description, but in process of reviewing the applications, we always look into that. There's exemption for the entire holding being brought in under the contract without having development permits. We leave that parcel validity question open. But if there's a permit associated with the planning and development, and we are looking at a vacant lot, and planning also checks that regarding the parcel validity.
And I guess like at a high level, I mean, I guess maybe it's, these are contracts involving real property. So it's important from the surveyor's office that from a legal perspective that, everything is accurate and correct.
Yeah, sometimes we have these, the assessor's parcels are not matching the legal parcels. And that it's important to have that distinction.
Yeah, and I think a good way to weave that in, Teresa, if you scroll down a little bit, is under maybe we talk about this earlier in the presentation, but I have it right here. Just like introducing who our members are and a little description next to each one, like what the surveyor does, what planning does, why we have the representatives that we have, what they do. And I can flesh that out. It didn't have to be brief, but something like, like you had mentioned, making sure the legal lots, for that.
And preparing legal descriptions.
Legal descriptions. And, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, yeah, I think keep that section to the point, only because I don't know, I mean, I'm thinking of things that can go in a tangent, in the past where, well,
Okay.
Yeah.
you start talking about has this always been the construct of the membership? At some time there was ag representatives in the board, and then there weren't. And then, and then I remember we
that
got a
question
memo
will
from
come up
council a couple of
regardless.
years ago of the history of it. And so, not that
David,
it'll go on a tangent, but if we can just, kind of
Brief.
be brief on that.
Yep, I
that
agree.
question might come up regardless. I think it will come up.
Well, yeah, and I just remember there were questions about like who's on this committee, and that those did come up at that, at least during the AEO ordinance, and we were talking about that. So,
I can
okay.
try to, I mean, and I forget her name. Who was our council that did the memo for us on that history?
Oh,
Maria.
Maria Navarro.
Yeah, I think I still have that. So maybe, I don't know, if you have that in your files, but if not, it'd be good just so you know that it exists. So I'll forward that to you. Yeah,
I think I have that too.
yeah. So if either of us have it, it'd be good to send it to council, just so
Yeah.
they're aware of it.
Okay.
Maria Novak. That's right.
Oh, this ain't Navarro, it was Novak, yes, legal creation, I think I have that. Okay, and then down below that is the compliance oh, sorry, go ahead, Royce.
And I don't know if this is important to compare to any other counties or not, but for example, San Luis County has 15 members on their Ag Preserve Committee.
Mm,
And
that's helpful to know.
so there are differences in different counties. That's
Okay. That's good background information to have in case you get questions about that.
Are you also part of that committee, Royce?
I'm an alternate member now. I was on there. It just got too much, but I serve as an alternate at this point. And they run things very differently.
Yes.
And they only meet 3 times a year, about roughly. And but honestly, the planning department there does all the background checking prior to the meetings. And then when they come, they simply present it and the committee votes yay or nay. So
I want that.
Oh, yeah, it's packaged
David.
up. If you have never watched a meeting, very different.
yeah, very different.
Okay. Just under compliance and enforcement, you guys hit a lot of these items. I was thinking triggers for enforcement. It could be non-responders for the questionnaire. The assessor's office notices, a split in the contract. We can, smooth this language over if we need to, but comes to APAC for proposed development, that we have no active enforcement program, and that there's county initiated non-renewals, and is APAC's only enforcement tool at this point. And also something somebody mentioned was that how our agenda, we agendize each item to include the consistency with the uniform rules. So.
And I don't know, maybe this is just, it's information that council may have more knowledge of, or at least be prepared if it's raised, thinking about this, what are our enforcement tools? And the material breach statutes in the Williamson Act. I've never really fully understood it, other than I think it provides a mechanism not only for participating agencies, but I think also even other contract holders could bring a claim of material breach against a property owner under contract that's doing some use that is not allowed on contracted land. But
Tangential, I mean, it's removing the Williamson Act to just a contract. And then the board can initiate litigation on that for the breach of the contract.
Mm.
So it is an enforcement mechanism, but it's not run through like APAC. It would be a board decision with county council to say, okay,
right.
or a private, like you said, a private landowner alleging a breach of the contract. And
Right. So potentially if there's some gross violation, and that could be a tool in the quiver, but
it's not like directly under the Williamson Act, it's just general contract law. And that is a contract with the
Oh, I
county to
see.
follow certain rules. If they breach that contract, then, you know, the county has enforcement mechanisms for the breach of a general contract.
right.
Okay, so we could mention, do you think we could mention that too, just as general
Yeah, I'm not sure. I
contract
mean,
law? There's,
whatever you guys think is appropriate to, I mean, it is available to the board as a, you know, if you found out that somebody had an ag preserve and they've got an amusement park on it or something, just, you know, like you said, grossly inappropriate. We don't have to wait the 10 years and non-renew, and there is a way to go handle that, but
Or Neverland Train and Depot and
oh, now that you mention that, maybe we should include this, it's a, you know, that it's the non-renewal and it's a 10 years. Yeah, that, because it isn't instantaneous.
On-
That came up too.
For breach of contract. That could, you know, the county could act, and then I always wonder, like, 10 years is almost like reward. Low kind of position.
probably, I mean, is it because it's a actual, the county would be acting to enforce the contract. They could try to ask the judge to apply certain reparations that are, I mean, like
there's a lot of
taxes
options
or other
by
things like that.
injunction to say, stop, you know, stop the activity where we're doing. It would just be case by case,
It could-
depending on what the violation was,
Okay.
but just basic principles of contract law. It is a contract with the landowner and the county.
Right.
The landowner violates that, it's a breach of contract, and you just follow those.
I was just thinking in terms of, I mean, correlating it to a cancellation. Well, the cancellation has the 12.5% or the cancellation fee that relates to getting, you know, somewhat payment for the preferential assessment. I don't know if
Could be the generally
correlated to-
damages are you make the party whole again. So the county could say, to make us whole, we need our full tax base back.
right.
It's an option.
And will you make yourself available as well? I don't know if that's, or for APAC, or I guess you could decide that in
At
your
the
own.
hearing.
Don't
At the
know.
hearing.
I can ask. I don't know if that's a
Okay,
part of this or not, but
sure, okay. I could mention you as like that you attend all the meetings. That might be something helpful. Yeah, meetings, county council in attendance. Okay, so,
Or probably, I mean, he could attend
yeah,
Zoom as well if that was,
yes. Royce, we were just mentioning if you aren't able to attend in person, I'm sure Zoom would be, appears Zoom wouldn't be a problem as
I'd
well.
appreciate that. And if it's in March, it's looking like I would be able to be there, but
okay.
Okay,
we're still doing some things with my wife and the doctors, so.
okay. Thank you, Royce.
Mm.
One of the things, Madam Chair, just to clarify on the first bullet under triggers for enforcement. So this is only happening when people come to APAC. So it's kind of like part of the third bullet point comes to APAC for proposed development. And this is when we say, okay, well, you're a non-responder.
Yeah,
So you need to do that.
right.
So I guess we just need to clarify that we're not enforcing, that maybe this is a potential enforcement tool that we could have, but we don't have it yet.
Which one?
The non-responders, the list that I provided you last year, where we haven't decided. I mean, we never,
Maybe remove that then?
yeah, maybe remove it.
Okay, I'm fine with
I
that.
think that would be the. probably
He's
best.
saying that, that first bullet under triggers for enforcement to remove the county and annual questionnaire
Non-responders, Because
non-responders.
we're not really enforcing it on,
It might create more problems if we
Yeah.
left it in. Mhm.
But maybe we just reframe this section as these are sort of the, maybe the heading is just contract compliance. And these are the touch points of where, the first one is, we don't do active enforcement, but these are the touch points where we have an opportunity to identify if there is compliance or potential non-compliance.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the,
You can have a bullet point of all those touch
Yeah.
points. Like,
Opportunities for compliance.
and this is the biggest way we find out if they're in non-compliance.
right.
When they respond.
Right.
And they tell us, oh, yeah, I'm still planting 20 acres of vineyard.
Sergio, the second bullet notices a split in the contract
Mhm.
that
That's the ownership that when somebody
Reviewing
sells
the
off,
recordation.
yeah, record, yeah.
How would I rephrase that maybe?
there's something perhaps
Changing ownership. The cost is a split. Notices the changes in ownership, the cost is a split.
But is that a regular practice of your office to review real estate transactions that are recorded?
Well, yeah.
In general?
In general, yeah,
And then
because.
knowing some of those are on contracted land.
Correct, because we only reassess only when there's a change in ownership. So we see all the changes in ownership. And when I see a change in ownership that's affecting only a portion of a contract,
Right.
that's what raises.
Right, so that's,
flag.
yeah, so that's a touch point in the normal duties of your office.
Yeah,
That's a touch
exactly.
point.
Should I say assessor's office notices a change or you regularly review them?
It's a normal,
Okay.
yeah,
property by non-contracted.
They just made deeds.
notices
Yeah, you make
Through a
deed,
deed.
right.
in
Then
ownership.
they catch.
We'll do that later. I don't want to spend too much.
Right.
So if there's nothing else on the content, I want to move to the time frame. Is that something that,
Just one other, I don't know how it weaves in, but I know it's probably something that's been stated at the board is, and using the AEO as an example, how can the APAC better coordinate with the planning commission on their recommendations, particularly on policy and ordinance type of, like the AEO, where,
agree?
so I think it's, maybe we preemptively say these are some of the things that the APAC is committed to working with to improve coordination and exchange of information, particularly on draft recommendations from the committee. And so, it's like early, maybe there's, early meetings or we attend or we give a briefing with the planning commission or working with planning and development to clearly convey APAC, having that conversation of, in some context of why the APAC is recommending certain uniform rule amendments early on in the process. So
I agree.
whatever that is, just
Yeah.
I think they're looking for that, and they clearly stated that they want to see that
Okay,
improvement.
I agree. Are you thinking should we add something in about working with the APAC, under the APAC bullet, something about working with, under communication with contract holders and,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's part, whether it's, part of the
we're advisory to the board.
we're advisory to the board and sort of when we're talking, yeah. And that was sort of I think that's what
Yes,
they didn't want to take that extreme walling off silos so that, because the APEC, E&D could have done a better job of providing the plan more context and the information of what APAC's recommendations were early in the process so that rather than on the back end. And so,
I agree. And it looked kind of, I thought, could be interpreted as sort of like unaware of what other concerns are. It was yeah, okay, I
Ri-
agree.
Right. And so maybe as part, one of the touch points, obviously a lot of the, are the regular APAC agendas where we're reviewing applications on contracted land, but the committee also reviews when there's, policy or ordinance amendments.
Oh, I see.
Typically, planning development will, early on in the process, discuss those with the committee and then whether or not that would be some recommended amendments to allow those uses on contracted land. We can give some examples like AEO, and the near-term kind of opportunities would be the utility scale solar amendments, even though we already had given some recommendations for the environmental review. I think, we probably want to talk on that specifically of how we can work with the planning commission early on.
Yeah.
And so I think, again, just listing out that's, again, one of the touch points where on policy and ordinance amendments that affect agricultural contracted land, often APAC will be reviewing those and giving draft recommended amendments.
Anything else on this topic? All right. Teresa, would you mind pulling up? I just made comments on the bullet points on my draft, my version here, but if we could pull up that the timeline. And also I have a copy of the board's other potential dates, but what I was looking at, actually the 3-4 meeting is in Santa Barbara. Yeah, I was trying to shoot for a Santa Barbara meeting, but starting from the beginning, just to look at our timeline in December, we did have our APAC meeting. We established an ad hoc subcommittee. We introduced the topic, and then Sergio and I met right before the shutdown, which was kind of a miracle. I was surprised. Thank you, Sergio. On 12/23, we went over topics, content, some statistics and potential dates. Here we are today on the 9th, talking about our timeline, and I wanted to see kind of overall if we could meet. I think the February date there, February 4th, as you can see, the docketing deadline is January 23rd. And wait, is that right? Do I have that? Yeah. So we're looking at the March 4th, sorry. The March 4th meeting, and that's, February 20th is the docketing deadline, which is pretty soon. And that would, that's something I wanted to get information from tomorrow, is more detail on what exactly is expected on the review and who wants to review the board letter, and the PowerPoint needs to be provided a little bit earlier too, as I understand, than the actual docket deadline. So, and I was choosing March 4th because it seemed like the most, the soonest we could do it, but it is an aggressive timeline. And that would mean probably we'd have to have at least one special meeting if we were to do that, because we would need to probably start a board letter review loop at the earliest, the beginning of February, to meet that 20th deadline. And then if we'd have to pull in the anybody from the CEO's office too, would be, I don't know, it's kind of hard to make these, but I wanted to see just in general, what's committee's availability. I was trying to pick a date for the board hearing and working backwards. Is there availability on the 4th or the 11th for folks? The 4th is Santa Barbara and the 11th is Santa Maria.
February, you're saying? Yeah.
March 4th, March 11th.
Yeah, I mean, I think any of those dates, at least on my end, would work. And maybe in the meeting tomorrow, maybe that's, I mean, I think March 4th is probably the soonest
Uh-huh.
we can make. And then maybe part of the conversation is like, okay, well,
Maybe the 18th might be the latest.
Well, I was thinking April 1st, you know. I was thinking that's probably the latest that we could do it, because then the next couple of hearings are budget hearings, and then you probably wouldn't want to wait till that. But it'd be good at least just to know, okay, is there some flexibility if we were to accomplish the hearing, you know, let's just say the April 1st, that would give more flexibility on the front end to have some of the meetings and get everything docketed. But so it'd just be good just to have that conversation as a, you know,
Yeah,
what's the range of potential?
sure. So can committee members just look at your calendars? Can we get, can you look at them now and tell me if you can make, let's look at the 4 dates. Let's look at March 4th, 11th, and 18th. And then the 1st. So for the first one there, March 4th, does anyone have a conflict? That meeting date? Are you able to see your calendar, Royce?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm fine for all 4 of those.
okay, great.
And so am I. I'm okay for all of them.
Oh, sorry. I think I'm out the week of the 18th. Is that
March 18th,
18th?
you checking?
I'm checking.
Okay. Alex?
I'm good for all those dates.
Okay,
Yeah, the rest of the dates are fine, but yeah, the 18th is
okay,
difficult for me.
so the 18th.
And then when I was looking it up, the PowerPoint would be due the Wednesday before the meeting.
Is it? Okay. So the PowerPoint is due the Wednesday, oh, it's Wednesday before the docket deadline for the
Yes.
board letter?
Mhm.
I see. So, okay.
Something else to consider.
Yeah. It's definitely aggressive for early
So
morning.
you almost just have to get it done, add on that additional week.
Stephanie, generally, like, so we do review. The board letters generally go to auditor,
Yeah,
CEO, our
risk.
office.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you may not need to do all those. We ask for our office at least a week before
Yeah.
the docketing deadline.
Yes.
Working backwards from that, and then it needs, full presentation needs to be there. So the PowerPoint and all that sort of stuff, a week.
Yeah. And I try to, yeah, and what we do normally on other board letters, they're just contract stuff. I try and get it out 3 weeks before well, first I give it to the CEO's office, and then I send it to Risk, County Council Hudson, and then to auditor. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, I mean, on our end, we don't, our docketing calendar, we just have our PowerPoints the Wednesday before the hearing that we submitted, so it's after the board letter is docketed.
Oh, really? Okay.
But we
Huh.
can work with the clerk on that, you know.
Okay.
I don't know.
And I just didn't know how the board letter was going to be presented, if it was going to be from the Ag Department or from a dual. So we'll see. Okay, so what I heard is the March 18th was the one date where Sergio was not.
The admin agenda to set hearing or
Mm,
And We're
It's just
gonna
a-
have, it's gonna be on the departmental agenda, and it's on their long-range plan calendar. And it's not a legislative item, so I don't think we have to set the.
Yeah.
Typically, we do the set hearing if it's something where the clerk of the board needs to do the noticing, but normally
Receive a report.
just receiving the
You don't need to
report.
do that, but they may push your meeting based on how busy the D.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could,
If you've got
yeah,
a giant D agenda, they'll just push you off because it's not
Right.
important.
right.
Sure. That's fine. That's on there. Yeah. And I did put us on I just has a placeholder right now with Chelsea, Lindsay. So, but I let her know it might very well get moved. Okay. So good. Okay. So that, right. So it might be the 4th, 11th, or the 1st, the 3 dates. Okay. Okay.
You want to talk about some potential special hearing dates?
Yes, let's do that.
What days may this room be available in general?
This month, yeah. Starting this month.
Just give me a minute.
Uh-huh. And maybe we could do, I'm thinking, just potential dates.
If they push it back.
Oh, no, I was thinking for the special meetings, maybe we look at two. I don't think we'll need two, but maybe one. Do you think we'd need one or two in January? Maybe one in January to look, what I'm thinking is the next meeting would be to show the committee like a draft PowerPoint. So you and I would need to meet again probably one more time. So I'm thinking.
You're thinking even if we go with the March 4th board hearing, we probably are going to need at least one special hearing, and then we'll utilize our February APAC meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And then potentially if we hear that they're open to pushing it back either, to later in March or April 1st, then we can then add additional
Hmm.
special hearings if we
Yeah.
need to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would this be for a Thursday as well? Or
I guess whatever works. I mean, it'd probably be good to start there since
that's
our
right.
schedules generally are aligned with that, but if,
I mean, if I just look at when Montecito, when they meet here, I think we could do it like the same day. Because the morning would be
What day
available.
is that?
is it always the second?
The 23rd, January 23rd,
Oh, okay.
or February 6th. Which is, I'm getting the shared calendar as well.
Yeah, let me.
That would be our only item. So we have to just be out of here before noon, right? Wrapped up. So that shouldn't be a
Okay.
problem.
Oh, okay, so it'd be mornings.
Yeah.
Okay,
The regular 9 a.m. start time. So maybe we look at January 23rd.
yeah, let's look at January 23rd.
That would work for me.
Yep, works for me as well.
Yeah, I'm available.
Okay,
Already have it on my calendar.
okay. All right, January 23rd. So can we book that? Put that in, pencil it in, and then we would need to do noticing how far out? 7 days, is it?
10 days.
10 days, okay. So that would be,
We need to start doing that before Monday.
so, okay.
10 business day or just 10 regular days?
Oh, is it 10 working days?
Oh, yes, 10 business days.
Oh, okay. So it'd be 1, 2,
We'd have to notice today.
Oh.
3.
Then we would have to do,
By Wednesday, the 8th?
I mean, we could look, I'm getting that, the calendar. So just give me maybe a few minutes and maybe we could
Sure.
pick a different date.
Yeah. February 6th?
Yeah, I'm
That
open.
might, okay. Royce or Alex or Dave?
I can't on February 6th. I have another meeting at 11 a.m. So if it was before that,
Okay.
potential.
Yeah, I mean, if
Oh, I have a
I have
conflict.
a conflict
I'm
I have
sharing
a
another
TPAC meeting.
Yeah. And like Fridays are bad for people, 7th?
I'm here on Fridays.
That would work.
Anybody else? Can you do on the 7th? I don't know if that's available, the room's available though.
February 7th, you said?
Yeah, February 7th.
Also, the 30th is available, January 30th. Just-
Yeah, I think the January 30th won't work.
Oh.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I misspoke. January 30th. Yeah, I could do the 30th.
I'm good with
Okay.
the 30th.
I'm good with that.
Okay, David's looking. Alex, how's the 30th look for you? You could do the 30th? Okay.
And then I'll get the calendar for the remainder of the year and then send it over to kind of look out.
Okay.
So,
David's got
I'm
on the
just,
30th.
Cynthia, can you check? Oh, I guess it's a Teams meeting, so they're not going to do it in here. There was just that PRA training that
Oh.
is on the 30th in the morning. And it's mandatory, so I don't know if all of us need to be there. I mean, potentially we could just do it. I mean, that's from 10 to 11. So is most of the 30th, are you open, excuse me, are you open later in the morning or in the early afternoon?
I'm open most of the day.
Same here.
Yeah, the room's available, also available all day.
So we want to maybe do like a 1 o'clock? Does that work?
I could do one.
Lunch?
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Royce, does that work for you?
Yes,
One?
that works for me.
Okay.
Okay.
Alex? Okay, so how about 1 o'clock, 1:30? Sorry, January 30th. At 1 o'clock, and it will be here in the Planning Commission hearing room. And then we can go from there if we need any other additional meetings, and I'll have more insight from tomorrow's.
You'll know, you'll have a better idea of
I
the-
will.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for all your, wasn't sure about the PowerPoint and how that plays out and who, I just have a lot of questions on what they're expecting. Okay, so that's it for,
Public comment on?
any public comment on this item? No, okay,
No public
Yes.
comment.
okay,
Yes. Oh, public comment. Sorry.
go ahead. And
So reports of committee
yes,
members?
report to committee member, or from committee
Jump the
members.
gun.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so this is my monthly report on anything recorded affecting ag preserves. There were several new or replacement contracts that were recorded in December. The first one is contract number 20-AP-006. This is a contract that was approved back in 2020. And it is affecting, the original contract was 70-AP-008. Jordan is the last name of the owner for this new contract. And in fact, this is a replacement contract of a portion of 70-AP-008. The issue with this is that the original contract, 70-AP-008, included also another portion that is owned by a different owner. I think that was the reason it came to APAC back then in 2020. But that portion owned by J. Fisher Farms was not non-renewed. So it's still there. And I had asked David if he remembered. I was able to find the action that was taken on October 2nd of 2020, where the entire contract, I'm assuming it was the entire contract, was non-renew, was recommended for non-renewal. But then it was a little confusing because we dropped it. I think we dropped the item when we found out that, Jordan was going to replace his portion. So it's kind of, I don't know how to put it, David. I think You might be able to explain this a little better. So the question for this committee is, I think, what do we do with the other portion that hasn't been replaced? And that it's kind of like in limbo. We still have it in Ag Preserve, but
Right. Yeah, so Sergio had reached out to me and then I looked at my records and then it looks like it, for whatever reason, it just slipped through the cracks that because we had items in September of 2020 and in November of 2020 that were also recommended for non-renewals, and those went forward and went to the board. For whatever reason, this October one, and even, it slipped through the cracks. So I agree that now that the Jordan portion, they've gotten their replacement contract. I guess the things that Sergio, the process that I think we probably want to talk about is maybe we agendize next month sort of the contract, what's the owners, the
J. Fisher Farms?
J. Fisher Farms, and then the contract number to, it would be agendized to revisit Apac's original motion and the circumstances. And so I think that at least will be a platform that then we can decide if we think that we want to send a notice to appear, then that can set it off. But I think maybe we just, I'll work with Teresa and get some language to put it on as a new item to review the October 2020 APAC motion and recommendation. And then we can talk about what the circumstances since then are, if you're okay with that.
I'm perfectly fine with that. I think that's a good idea. Especially giving notice to the owner now that we're gonna that we're revisiting this would prompt them to
I guess that's the question that I'm not clear on. So Teresa, on something like that, would we notify the property owner that we're discussing their contract? Or would we just discuss it, and if the motion is to send a notice to appear, that's the vehicle?
I know that last time, the first time that we just like reviewed the item without noticing them, but this last meeting that we had, I did send them an email saying that their property was going to be discussed,
Okay,
but
so,
no one still showed up.
okay. So I guess, that's probably, if we have the information, it's probably the best practice, so.
Just
But
send them a copy
I'll
of the
work with
agenda.
you, yeah, on the language for the agenda.
All right.
That just gives them the ability to listen in.
Okay. So that I like that idea, David. Thank you. And then there were, like I said, other new contracts. 24-AP-002, I believe. Yeah, I think it's 24-AP-002. It's a new contract. That was the Nolan property that was recorded. The replacement contracts 24-AP-010 and 24-AP-011. Those two were replacement contracts for Bliss. One was Bliss Lance and the other is Victoria Bliss. You may remember
Carpinteria ones.
Carpinteria properties. So those were recorded in December. So meaning they will be effective on January 1st of 2025. So that is what was recorded in the month of December.
There were 4 or 5 contracts to be notice to appear and to put them on an upcoming agenda.
Same thing with change in ownership splits.
Mhm.
So they keep coming in. And
Yeah.
so I keep sending them to the chair first so that we review and create the special letter that It's a little different than the normal letter that Teresa sends, I believe.
Yeah, and so what I have been doing with those is I send the letter first. I send the letter and then I get them on the agenda and then I say in the letter, this will be discussed, as opposed to bringing it to the committee first. Is that I just want to make sure that that's what we're doing.
I think that's kind of what we've done on
Okay.
enforcement things.
Yes.
I mean, not that we're taking enforcement, that we're just trying to, or I guess we're reactivating.
Mhm.
And so,
Rather than using a whole month to say, I'm going to be sending, I mean, I could do that if you want me to put it on the agenda or work with Teresa, for example, if there's contract A and B, they're tied together. I could put them on the APAC agenda and say, this is going to be, this has been picked up by Sergio. This is why we're bringing this to your attention today, and they could be conduct.
yeah, I mean, maybe that's that's
That-
consistent with kind of what we've done. So maybe if through this discussion, if that's enough information for you to
Okay.
initiate the notice to appear, then we just don't have to, I think that's the logical outcome that we would have anyhow. So maybe we go that pathway and then we don't schedule anything for next meeting other than we wait for
the letter.
the letter to go out and then,
Okay.
it may be the March hearing
Right.
where we agendize it.
And what I've done in the past 2 months, the last couple of months, is that I've brought some items as discussion first. Would you prefer, do you like that better? Or do you want me to just continue to work with the chair? And I mean, I think some of them are easy enough or simple enough to just send them to the chair.
Yeah, I like that because I mean, some of the ones that you have brought have kind of nuances that
Yeah,
are good to
right.
get our collective thoughts.
Those will be included in the new list
Okay.
that we'll be working
Very
on.
good.
And that's it.
Okay.
From
Any
the
other
assessor's
reports from
desk.
committee members?
I have a report. So I come bearing gifts. Sorry, Royce, you'll have to appear in person. I'll save you a copy. So as I mentioned last month with the board, part of the board's action for adopting the agriculture enterprise ordinance was they also made changes to our uniform rules for those compatible uses. So we've republished the uniform rules based on the board's changes. We have hard copies here. It's also, this version is available on our website, P&D website, if you go to the uniform rules.
I think it's also available on your website, the Ag Commission.
Yeah, so as long as, if you do have links or if you have old links, make sure you're linking. I mean, if you link to the previous version, it's going to be in the same location, so it probably won't make a change, but just maybe just reconfirm this is the December 2024 published version. And then thank you to the Ag Commissioner's Office. We added a new photo from their photo stock. And thanks, Mel Graham, for assistance on that. And then I have a copy for County Council if you would like a hard copy. And then, if you have any of your people in your offices that want some copies, just let me know.
Is it possible to get, I know it was probably in the AEO packet, track changes or strike through underline? Is it possible to get something like that? Just email to us?
I can do that. I mean, basically, it would just be the version that we provided to the board.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Please, thanks.
Mhm.
Did use the web link, it works.
Oh, good.
Any other comment or reports from committee members? Okay. All right. So our meeting's adjourned and it is 11:35. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye,
Royce.
Bye.